My 7-year-old grandson accidentally took my daughter-in-law's work iPad to school. His teacher called me. "Ma'am, you need to come down here right away." I rushed over to the school. The police were already there. An officer took me into another room. "What we found on here is terrible." "Look." When I saw it, I couldn't believe it. "I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it's gone." That morning, I woke up to the familiar calm of a new day. At 67 years old, my mornings usually start slow, gentle. The little old radio on the kitchen shelf was murmuring the news. Today, they were saying something about a traffic jam downtown. Suddenly, the phone rang, sharp and shrill, shattering the silence. I jumped and spilled a little coffee on the table. Quickly wiping my hands on my worn-out apron, I answered, my heart beating a little faster. On the other end of the line was the voice of Miss Davis, Leo's teacher at Lincoln Elementary. Her voice was trembling, rushed, like she was trying to hold back a panic attack. "Mrs. Thompson, you need to come to the school immediately." Something happened. Something serious with Leo. I felt my heart sink, like someone was squeezing it. 1,000 horrible ideas raced through my head. "Oh my God! Did he fall? Is he hurt somewhere, Miss Davis?" I nearly shouted, my voice breaking with fear. I pictured Leo lying somewhere, his knees bleeding or worse, that he'd had an accident on the playground. Miss Davis hesitated, her voice full of discomfort. "It's not that. But you need to come in to understand." I didn't have time to ask any more questions. My mind was spinning with only one thought. I had to get to Leo right now. I quickly grabbed the old shawl hanging behind the door, without even turning off the stove, not caring about the coffee pot boiling over. I ran out into the street, my legs shaking, but trying to walk as fast as I could. The world around me seemed to fade away. I could only hear my own heartbeat pounding in my chest. In the cramped taxi, the driver kept looking at me in the rearview mirror. "In a big hurry, ma'am?" he asked, his voice curious. I didn't answer, just shook my head, my eyes fixed on the traffic outside the window. In my mind, I saw Leo's face, that curly-haired boy whose little hands always squeezed mine when we went for walks. If anything happened to him, I don't know how I could go on living. Leo is my light, the reason I still get up each morning with a little bit of joy, even though life isn't easy anymore. When the taxi stopped in front of the school gate, the scene I saw sent a chill down my spine. 2 cop cars were parked right out front, their red and blue lights flashing nonstop, like daggers in my heart. A few parents were gathered nearby, whispering with looks that were a mix of curious and worried. I overheard a few words: police, device, serious. Each word was like a hammer blow to my head. I pushed my way through the crowd, almost running toward the principal's office, where I had a feeling Leo would be. As I entered the small office, I saw Leo right away. He was curled up in a little ball on an old wooden chair, his little hands clutching his backpack like it was the only thing protecting him from the whole world. His eyes were red and swollen from crying so much, his little boy face filled with fear. I wanted to run and hug him, to tell him everything was going to be okay, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The principal, Mr. Thompson, stood up from his wooden desk and walked over to me. His face showed concern. His voice was low. "Mrs. Thompson, we found that Leo brought a device to class that has some very strange things on it." Before I could understand what these strange things were, the door swung open. Detective Miller walked in, a tall man with a serious face. In his hands, he carried an iPad, carefully sealed in a clear plastic evidence bag, the kind I'd only ever seen in cop movies. He looked me straight in the eye with a cold, emotionless gaze. "This is the work iPad of his mother, Jessica Thompson," he said in a firm voice. "When we turned it on, we saw things that I think you should see for yourself. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, the wife my son, Michael, was always so proud of, the mother Leo adored. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Jessica worked for a big pharmaceutical company, always busy with meetings and business trips. That iPad, I remembered Leo telling me he'd taken it from his mom's desk by mistake. thinking it was his to play games on. I scolded him for being careless, but I never thought the consequences would be this serious. Miller motioned for me to follow him into a small adjacent room. As soon as the door closed, all the noises from outside, the parents' murmurs, the sound of cars disappeared. It was just me, Miller, and the iPad on the table. He unlocked the screen, and what appeared made my world come crashing down. In front of me weren't math homework or the kids' games Leo usually played. It was a completely different world, a world I never thought could exist in my family. Long, sappy messages that weren't for Michael, but for a man named Ryan. Photos they sent each other, not of the family or Leo's birthday, but shady pictures, full of secrets. And then bank transactions for huge amounts of money, business documents filled with terms I couldn't understand. I swiped through page after page, my hands shaking with a lump in my throat so tight it felt like someone was choking me. What is this?" I whispered, my voice broken. Miller didn't answer right away, just looked at me with an expression that was part stern, part sympathetic. "We're investigating," he finally said. "But what's on here indicates that Jessica Thompson is involved in illegal activities. Very serious ones." I sank into the chair, feeling like I didn't have an ounce of strength left in my body. Jessica, the daughter-in-law I thought was the perfect woman. Hard-working, attentive, loving to her husband and son. I remembered the nights she cooked for everyone, the way she smiled at Leo, how she held Michael's hand. All of it now seemed like a lie. I thought about Michael, my son, who had given his wife his whole heart, and about Leo, that innocent child, now sitting outside, scared and not understanding what was happening. Detective Miller's deep, cold voice cut through the air, snapping me out of my daze. "We're holding on to this device for the investigation." "You can't take it." I just sat there, my hands still trembling, nodding like a robot. In my head, the images from the iPad kept spinning. The messages, the dollar amounts, the secrets I never imagined would surface in my family. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to understand why, but my throat was dry. I couldn't say a single word. A young officer in a crisp uniform came in with a folder in his hand. He read in a monotone voice, as if he were just completing a routine procedure. "Evidence seized at Lincoln Elementary School from the student Leo Thompson. One iPad device, serial number." I stopped listening, only feeling my hands shake as I took the pen to sign the form. My signature came out crooked, a scribble that showed the chaos in my mind. Leo, my innocent boy, was now caught up in a mess that not even I, a 67-year-old woman with life experience, could comprehend. A policewoman, thin and with a soft voice, approached Leo. "Hey, champ, want to come with me to the playground for a little bit?" she said, trying to smile to calm him down. Leo looked at me, his eyes still red, and then obediently he took the officer's hand and left. Seeing his small back walk away, I felt my heart ache. He's only 7. At this time of day, he should be running around with his friends, not huddled in the principal's office surrounded by cops. Miss Davis was standing nearby, her hands clasped, her expression full of guilt. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Thompson," she said in a trembling voice. "I was just going to open the device to check Leo's homework. I never imagined." I looked at her, wanting to tell her I didn't blame her, that it was all a terrible mix-up. But I just nodded slightly with no energy to speak. In my head, everything was a tangled mess. Jessica, my daughter-in-law who I trusted, who I considered a model mother and wife, was now connected to things so dark I didn't even dare to think about them. As I left the office, I overheard the police officers whispering among themselves. One name was repeated like another knife in my heart. Ryan Peterson. I didn't know who he was, but that name sent a chill down my spine. He was like a shadow, a threat I couldn't yet see clearly. I took Leo's hand tightly and led him out of the school. The group of parents was still there, their curious gazes following us. I lowered my head and quickened my pace, just wanting to escape those stares. In the taxi on the way home, the driver looked at us in the rearview mirror. "These are scary times," he said, clicking his tongue. "The things kids bring to school these days." I didn't respond, just squeezed Leo's hand tighter. The boy was silent, his gaze lost out the window, but I knew he was scared. "Grandma," he said suddenly in a tiny voice. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take Mom's iPad." I hugged him, trying to hold back my tears. "Don't you worry, sweetheart," I whispered. "It's not your fault." But deep down, I knew this went far beyond a simple mix-up. When we got there, the house felt empty and cold. Michael, my son, had left for work early that morning. It was just Leo and me in a heavy silence. I quickly made him some chamomile tea, hoping the gentle aroma would calm him. Leo sat at the kitchen table, hugging the mug with his little hands, but his gaze was still distant. "Grandma, what are they going to do to Mom's iPad?" he asked. I didn't know what to tell him. So I just stroked his head and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to fix everything." On the table, the evidence seizure form was still there, my shaky signature a reminder of what had just happened. I picked up the phone and dialed Michael. One ring, two rings, and then just a busy signal. My son wasn't answering. I thought about calling Jessica, but my hand froze. The serious image of Detective Miller, the messages, the photos on the iPad, it all came back to me so clearly. I didn't dare face her, didn't dare ask her what she was hiding. In the afternoon, I sent Leo over to Mrs. Gable's house, my good neighbor. "I'm just running to the store for a bit," I lied, just to have a moment alone. But instead of going to the market, I walked aimlessly through the familiar streets. The images from the iPad wouldn't stop replaying in my head. The sappy messages, the huge dollar amounts, the documents full of secrets. I stopped by a tree, leaning against its old trunk, trying to breathe and calm myself down. But the fear clung to me, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. I thought about Michael, about the years we had spent together. When my husband died, Michael was the only one by my side, my rock. And now, I had to tell him the truth, that the wife he loved, the mother of his child, might be living a completely different life. My soul ached. I didn't want to shatter my son's happiness, but I couldn't let Leo grow up in a family full of lies either. That night, when Michael got home, I knew I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I had to tell my son the truth. I sat at the dining room table, holding a cup of now cold chamomile tea, watching Michael silently eat each spoonful. Leo had already eaten and was playing with his toy cars in a corner of the living room. Jessica was still there, playing her part as the perfect wife and mother. She cleared the table, smiled sweetly, chatted with Leo about his homework, as if nothing had happened. Seeing her, I couldn't help but shiver. How could someone act so well, when just hours before I had seen her terrible secrets on that iPad? I tried to stay calm, to keep my gaze from revealing the suspicion burning inside me. I waited until Jessica went into the bathroom and the sound of running water filled the house. Then I stood up and pulled Michael out onto the balcony. The cool night air blew, carrying the smell of eucalyptus from the neighbor's yard. Michael looked at me, his eyes tired. "Mom, what's wrong? Why are you so tense?" he asked in his deep voice. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. This was my son, the one I had raised, the one I had watched grow up. How was I going to tell him that the woman he loved might be betraying him, that his family was about to fall apart? "Michael," I began, my voice trembling. "At Leo's school today, I saw things that I don't want to believe, but I can't not tell you." I told him everything, from Miss Davis's panicked call, the scene with the cop cars in front of the school, to what I saw on Jessica's iPad, the loving messages, the bank transactions, the secret documents. I let it all out in a rush, as if stopping would mean losing the courage to continue. "I saw it with my own eyes, Michael. The police are investigating." And they mentioned a name, Ryan Peterson. Michael frowned. His eyes filled with confusion, but then he shook his head, as if trying to push my words away. "Mom, that's ridiculous," he said, his voice full of disbelief. "Jessica is my wife, Leo's mom. She would never do something like that. It must be a misunderstanding. Someone could have used her iPad or it's a very sick joke." I took his hand, trying to make my voice sound calm, though my heart was pounding. "Michael, I don't want to believe it either. But I saw the messages, the photos, the numbers. The police kept the iPad as evidence. You have to believe me." Michael's patience seemed to run out. He pulled his hand away, threw the cigarette he was holding to the ground, and his eyes flashed with anger. "Mom, you're trying to make me doubt my own wife," he yelled, his tone louder than I'd ever heard from him. "Can't you see how tired I am? I work all day to provide for my family, and now you want me to believe Jessica's cheating on me? I don't want to hear any more of this." His words were like a stab wound. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him so he would wake up. But I just stood there, helpless, watching my son turn his back on me and go back inside. Just then the bathroom door opened. Jessica came out, her hair still damp, a towel over her shoulders. She looked at Michael and me with a surprised expression. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, her voice soft, but I noticed a flicker of tension in her. Michael turned to his wife and his expression softened instantly, as if all his doubts had vanished in a second. "Nothing, sweetie," he said, his voice light. "My mom's just worrying too much. I'll always trust you." Jessica smiled, a perfect smile, but I caught a fleeting moment of panic in her eyes before she covered it with her fake sweetness. "Sarah, why would you think that about me?" she said, her voice catching as if she were holding back tears. "Did I do something wrong?" I wanted to scream, to unmask her, but I stayed silent. Her words were part of a play, and I knew I couldn't win against her in that game, not now. Dinner that night was as heavy as lead. We ate in silence, the only sounds being the clinking of spoons against plates and the TV news in the living room. Leo, sensitive like all children, felt the tension. He looked at me, then at his dad, and asked quietly, "Did Mommy and Daddy have a fight?" Michael quickly pulled him close, stroking his head. "No, champ, everything's fine," he said, but his voice trembled as if he didn't believe it himself. I looked at Leo, my heart in a knot. He didn't deserve this, didn't deserve to be trapped between the truth and a lie. Jessica cleared the plates in silence, glancing at me out of the corner of her eye from time to time. Those glances were no longer those of a daughter-in-law, but silent warnings. I tried to act normal, poured Leo more water, but inside me a storm was raging. I knew she was studying me, trying to guess how much I knew. After dinner, Jessica suddenly stood up with an excuse. "I have something urgent for work. I have to step out for a moment." She put on her coat, grabbed her purse, and left before I could say anything. Michael just nodded as if he were already used to his wife's unexpected departures. I stood by the window, watching Jessica's figure disappear under the dim streetlights. In the darkness, I saw her stop at the corner and pull out her phone. Her voice, though low, reached me through the slightly open window. "Ryan," she whispered, her tone full of anguish. I stood there, frozen, my heart racing. That name again, like a ghost, confirming that what I saw on the iPad was no mistake. That night, when Leo was asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen, under the dim light that illuminated my face. The fear still clung to me, but mixed with it was a fierce determination. I couldn't let my family fall apart. I couldn't let Leo grow up in a world of lies. I knew I had to do something, even if it meant facing the most painful truth. The next morning, as I was hanging laundry in the yard, the phone in my apron pocket vibrated, breaking the silence. I dried my hands, feeling my heart pound when I saw Detective Miller's number on the screen. "Mrs. Thompson, we need you to come down to the station immediately to give us more information," his serious, no-nonsense voice said. I nodded, though he couldn't see me, and replied, "I'm on my way." I ran inside, checking that Leo was playing with his puzzle in the living room. The boy looked up and gave me an innocent smile, but his eyes still held a hint of yesterday's confusion. "Where are you going, Grandma?" he asked in his little voice. I stroked his head, forcing a smile. "I'm just running an errand, sweetheart. You be good. I'm going to ask Mrs. Gable to watch you." Leo nodded, but I know he sensed my unease. I went to Mrs. Gable's house, the neighbor who has been with my family for so many years. She was watering her flower pots in the yard, her gray hair peeking out from under a straw hat. "Rosa, can you watch Leo for a little bit, please?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Mrs. Gable looked at me, her eyes full of concern. "Sarah, something's not right, is it? I've seen how tense you've been since yesterday." I shook my head, not wanting to drag her into this dangerous mess. It's just my own stuff, don't worry. Mrs. Gable nodded, but I know she didn't believe me. The police station was a noisy, busy place, with a thick air that smelled of sweat and paper. A young officer led me down a long hallway, the echo of my shoes resounding on the cold granite floor. They took me to a small conference room with tinted windows that hid the curious glances from outside. Inside, Detective Miller was standing, his arms crossed, with the same serious expression from yesterday. Sitting next to him was a middle-aged woman, intelligent-looking, dressed in a dark blue pantsuit. She stood up and shook my hand firmly and confidently. "I'm District Attorney Evans," she introduced herself, her voice clear and decisive. "I'll be handling this case." DA Evans slid a thick folder towards me, filled with printed pages of letters, numbers, and images. "This is what we extracted from your daughter-in-law's iPad," she said, pointing to a name highlighted on the first page, Ryan Peterson. "He's the director of a large pharmaceutical corporation, but he's also the prime suspect in a case we've been following for a long time." I flipped through the pages, feeling my heart beat faster as I saw the figures from the bank transactions. Millions of dollars moving between domestic and foreign accounts. Emails exchanged in dry, professional language, but hiding something shady that I couldn't quite understand. But what took my breath away were the internal documents about inflated contracts and the production of counterfeit drugs. I saw photos of a factory with smokestacks spewing thick black smoke, and a river of dark water flowing directly into the river near Phoenix, the same river where the neighborhood kids, including Leo, used to go swimming on hot days. I remembered the afternoons when Leo would come home, his hair soaked, excitedly telling me he had caught a little fish. The thought that that water could be poisoned made me shudder, and I gripped the edge of the table tightly. Day Evans was watching me, her gaze both stern and understanding. "We've been tracking Peterson for a long time, but we didn't have direct proof," she explained. "Your daughter-in-law's iPad is the key. It contains everything we need to dismantle this network." I nodded, but my mind was spinning. Jessica, whom I considered a daughter, was involved in something so horrible. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to understand how she could betray her family, but I had a lump in my throat and couldn't speak. Miller chimed in, his voice growing deeper, full of warning. "But this also means that you and your grandson are in danger. If Peterson or anyone in his network finds out you've seen this, they won't just stand by." His words were like a bucket of cold water. I sat there motionless, my cold hands clasped together, feeling fear course through my entire body. I thought of Leo, of his innocent smile, of Michael, who was still blindly in love with his wife. If they found out I was cooperating with the police, what would happen? I left the station with my head feeling as heavy as lead. Outside, reporters were surrounding another suspect, with microphones everywhere and camera flashes going off non-stop. I pulled the brim of my hat down and walked quickly through the crowd, praying no one would recognize me. On the bus back home, I huddled in a corner seat, staring out the window without seeing anything but blurry images of the city. In my mind, there was only one thought. I had to protect Leo, no matter what. He is my light, the reason I keep living after so much pain. I couldn't let them hurt him. I couldn't let those shadows touch him. When I got home, I had barely opened the door when I saw Jessica sitting in the living room, a cup of coffee in her hand. She looked up and locked her eyes on me, cold and probing, as if trying to read my face to see what I knew. "Where were you, Sarah? You were gone a long time," she asked, her voice soft but loaded with intent. I forced a smile, clutching my purse. "Oh, I just went to the market to pick up a few things," I replied, my voice trembling. Jessica nodded, but her eyes never left me, like a predator stalking its prey. The following days, I lived like a shadow, silently observing everything in the house that was once my family's home. Every morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling, like a stone on my chest. I tried to make Leo's days normal, taking him to school, making his breakfast, but my mind never stopped circling around Jessica and the secrets she was hiding. I knew I had to be careful, to make everything seem normal, but Jessica's prying eyes made me feel like I was walking on thin ice. During breakfast, I noticed Jessica couldn't stop checking her phone. She would sit across from me, her coffee cup in hand, but her eyes were glued to the screen. Every time a message came in, she would flip the phone over on the table, as if afraid someone might see. I pretended to be busy pouring milk for Leo, smiling at him as he told me about a drawing he made in class. But not a single one of Jessica's movements escaped me. She seemed to be living in her own world, a world where neither I, nor Michael, nor even Leo had a place. "Leo, finish your milk, honey, so I can take you to school," I said, trying to make my voice sound natural. Jessica looked up, glanced at me, and then went back to her phone. "I have an early meeting today," she told Michael in a flat voice. "I'll probably be a little late." Michael nodded without asking any more questions, as if he were already used to his wife's strange hours. I looked at him, my soul aching. My son, that man who used to be so strong and confident, now seemed oblivious to the cracks spreading through his own family. That afternoon, Jessica said she had to go to an unexpected meeting. I was standing in the kitchen doorway, watching her put on a dark blue dress, perfume, and her hair perfectly styled. "What kind of meeting requires you to get so dressed up?" I blurted out, trying to sound casual. Jessica turned and smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Important clients are coming to the company, Sarah," she replied, and quickly grabbed her purse and left. The door slammed shut, leaving behind a chilly silence. My gut told me something wasn't right. I couldn't just stand by. I couldn't let things continue like this without doing anything. I ran to Mrs. Gable's to drop off Leo. "Rosa, I have an emergency. Can you watch the boy for a bit?" I said, trying to hide the panic in my voice. Mrs. Gable looked at me worried. "Sarah, you've been acting so strange. If something's wrong, tell me. Don't keep it to yourself." I just shook my head, thanked her, and hurried away. I hailed a cab, my heart racing, and asked the driver to follow Jessica's car. "Please don't let her know we're following her," I whispered, my eyes fixed on Jessica's white sedan up ahead. The cabbie glanced at me in the rearview mirror, but didn't ask questions, just nodded and sped up. Jessica's car stopped in front of a luxury shopping center, where the glass buildings shimmered in the sun. I saw her get out, walking confidently but looking around as if searching for someone. Then a gleaming black SUV pulled up abruptly. A man in a suit and dark sunglasses got out and opened the door for her. I barely managed to see the license plate before Jessica got in, and the SUV sped off, disappearing into traffic. I stayed there, gripping the seat, trying to memorize the plates. The man's face was a blur, but the way Jessica got into the car without hesitation made me feel like I was being choked. I asked the cabbie to take me home, my mind a complete mess. The image of the black SUV and Jessica's furtive glances haunted me, a confirmation that what I saw on the iPad was no mistake. A few days later, I was called back to the station. In the small conference room, DA Evans and Detective Miller were waiting for me. "Mrs. Thompson, do you have any new information?" Miller asked, his gaze piercing. I took a deep breath and told them what I had seen that day, from how Jessica left the house to the black SUV. I repeated the license plate number, my voice trembling. Miller took notes and turned to another officer, ordering him to check it immediately. A few minutes later, he returned and nodded. "It's Ryan Peterson's car." DA Evans handed me a file with a photo of Ryan Peterson, taken at a charity event. He was wearing an elegant suit, and his arrogant, fake smile sent a shiver down my spine. "This is Jessica's lover and the mastermind of the whole network," DA Evans said, her voice serious but firm. "He's behind the production of counterfeit drugs and the money laundering. Your daughter-in-law's iPad has given us the evidence to get closer to arresting him." I looked at the photo, feeling my blood run cold. Ryan Peterson, that name was no longer just a ghost, but a real person with a fake smile and cold eyes. I thought about Jessica, how she continued to act like the perfect wife in front of Michael, and my soul ached. How could she live two lives, on one hand, Leo's mother, and on the other, the accomplice of a man like Peterson? That night, we were all watching TV, but I couldn't concentrate. Suddenly, a news report came on, praising Ryan Peterson for his great contributions to public health. His image on the screen in the middle of a cheering crowd left me frozen. The applause from the television was like hammer blows to my heart. I glanced at Jessica and saw her smiling, but it was a tense smile, as if she were trying to hide something. Michael didn't notice. He was focused on the screen, and Leo yawned, resting his head on my shoulder. Late that night, I got up for a drink of water, still feeling uneasy. As I passed the kitchen, I was surprised to see Jessica sitting there in the dark, with only the light from her phone illuminating her face. I quickly hid behind the door, my heart pounding. Jessica was whispering into the phone, her voice sweet but full of tension. "I love you, Ryan," she said with a happy smile I had never seen her give Michael. I stood there, my feet glued to the floor, feeling my world come crashing down once again. I went back to my room in silence, lay down, but couldn't sleep. On Saturday night, the atmosphere in the house seemed a little lighter. Michael and Leo were sitting in front of the TV, watching a football game with excitement. The shouts from the screen mingled with the laughter of father and son. I was in the kitchen cutting fruit, trying to immerse myself in that rare moment of peace. But deep down, I knew it was all a facade. The fear and suspicion were still there, like a shadow that never left. Jessica walked into the living room, smiled tenderly at Leo, and then turned to Michael. "I need to make a work call," she said, her voice soft, as if nothing was wrong. "It's an urgent team meeting, you know." Michael nodded without taking his eyes off the screen. "Sure, honey, go ahead," he replied, unconcerned. Jessica went into the small study at the end of the hall and closed the door. I put down the knife and looked at the plate of fruit, feeling a deep sense of unease. I don't know what possessed me, but my feet carried me down the hallway on their own. As I passed the study door, I heard Jessica's voice, harsh and tense, completely different from the sweetness she had just shown. "We can't!" she nearly shouted, her voice trembling. "The police have the iPad. If everything comes out, we're finished." I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart pounding so hard I felt it would burst out of my chest. A man's voice, deep and cold, answered on speakerphone, loud enough for me to hear every word. "Calm down, Jessica. If that old lady dares to open her mouth, we'll have to make her pay. You understand?" I froze, my feet rooted to the spot. That old lady, I knew he meant me. That threat was like a sharp knife plunging into my heart, making me feel that the danger was no longer a distant worry, but a reality closing in. Inside, Jessica was silent for a moment. Then she replied in a low but determined voice. "I know. I'll handle it." I tiptoed back so as not to make a sound and ran back to the kitchen. I stood there, gripping the edge of the table, trying to catch my breath. My breathing was ragged as if I had just run a marathon. I looked at the plate of fruit, the perfectly cut pieces of mango and watermelon, and told myself I had to act normal. If Jessica found out I had overheard her, if she suspected I was watching her, I didn't dare think about what would happen to Leo, to Michael, to this whole family. A moment later, Jessica came out of the study, her face unreadable. But as soon as she saw Michael and Leo, she forced a radiant smile, as if that terrifying phone call had never happened. "Who wants fruit?" she asked in a syrupy voice, taking the plate from my hands. Leo shouted with joy and ran to his mom while Michael smiled and hugged him. I just stood there, watching the scene, but with an icy feeling in my soul. How could she be such a good actress? How could she smile at her son when she had just been plotting such dark things? That night, the atmosphere in the house became more tense than ever. Leo accidentally knocked over a glass of milk on the table, a trivial thing that at any other time would have gone unnoticed. But Jessica exploded, her eyes flashing with fury. "This is all your fault!" She yelled at him, her voice sharp. "All the problems are because of you!" Leo froze, his round little eyes filled with fear, on the verge of tears. I understood immediately that she was referring to Leo taking the iPad to school, but her words were too cruel for a 7-year-old. Michael jumped up, put a hand on his wife's shoulder, and said, bewildered, "Jessica, what are you saying?" "He's just a kid." Jessica forced a smile, but it was a grimace that couldn't hide her tension. "Sorry," she said, softening her voice. "I'm just really tired today. Don't mind me." She bent down to clean up the spilled milk. but she shot me a look out of the corner of her eye, like a silent warning. I hugged Leo, who was sobbing with his face buried in my shoulder. "It's not your fault, sweetheart," I whispered, stroking his back. "Grandma's here. I'll always protect you." But inside, I knew I was facing a danger far greater than I had imagined. I couldn't sleep at all that night. The threat from that man's voice, surely Ryan Peterson, echoed in my ears. If that old lady dares to open her mouth— I lay there, the pale moonlight streaming through the window, illuminating the family photo hanging on the wall. It was from Leo's birthday last year, when we were all laughing happily. Now Jessica's smile in that photo sent shivers down my spine. I thought about Leo, about Michael, and I wondered if I would have the strength to face what was coming. The next morning I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I once again left Leo with Mrs. Gable, telling her I was going to the market, but in reality I went straight to the police station. In the small conference room, D.A. Evans was waiting for me. Her gaze sharp but understanding, I told her about the entire conversation I overheard. Every detail, from Jessica's frantic voice to Ryan's cold threat. He said that if I opened my mouth, they would make me pay, I told her, my voice trembling. D.A. Evans nodded, taking notes, and then looked at me. "This information is very important, Mrs. Thompson," she said in a firm voice. "It proves that Jessica is directly involved with Ryan in covering up the crime. We're going to increase surveillance on her." I left the station feeling a little lighter for having shared the burden, but the fear didn't leave me. On the way back, as the bus passed a familiar corner, I caught a glimpse of the black SUV I had seen at the mall. It was parked silently in the shade of a tree, and its headlights flashed once, like a warning. I shuddered and clutched the handkerchief in my purse. The danger was no longer a distant worry. It was right in front of me, closer than ever. After that meeting at the station, I returned home with my heart in a knot. D.A. Evans had told me they had enough grounds to request a warrant to tap Jessica's phone, and that a technical team had already discreetly installed a device on the cell phone she always carried. "Mrs. Thompson, you have to act completely natural," the DA warned me with her serious gaze. "Under no circumstances can you let her suspect anything. If she finds out you're cooperating with us, everything will become much more dangerous." I nodded, but inside me was a storm of fear and determination. I couldn't let Leo, my only light, be pulled into this vortex. In the following days, I lived like an actress, trying to maintain my composure in front of Jessica. Every morning I continued to make coffee, prepare breakfast for Leo, laughing with him as if nothing was wrong. But every time I looked at Jessica, I had to suppress the anger and pain that burned inside me. She continued to play her role as the perfect wife, hugging Leo, asking Michael about his work, but her eyes always passed over me, scrutinizing as if looking for a crack in the facade of normality I had built. One afternoon, my phone vibrated. It was Detective Miller. "Mrs. Thompson, we need you to come to the station immediately," he said, his voice urgent. I quickly left Leo with Mrs. Gable, lied about going to the market, and took a taxi to the station. In the small conference room, it was just Miller, D.A. Evans, and me. The tension was so sick I could barely breathe. Miller turned on a small recorder on the table, and Jessica's voice echoed, clear and cold, like a stab in my heart. "Michael is nothing," she was saying, her tone full of contempt. "I only need you, Ryan. When all this blows over, we'll go to Miami together. And the kid. Who cares? That's what the old lady is for." I collapsed into the chair, feeling like the world was caving in on me. My heart felt crushed. Jessica, the mother Leo loved, the wife Michael blindly trusted, was capable of saying such cruel words. Not only was she betraying Michael, but she was willing to abandon Leo, the son she had cradled and sung to sleep every night. I covered my face, tears streaming out uncontrollably. "How could she?" I whispered, my voice broken. Miller pushed a glass of water toward me, his expression softening but still stern. "I know this is very difficult, Mrs. Thompson," he said. D.A. Evans continued, her voice soft but firm. "You now have irrefutable proof to show your son. We will support you, But you need to be strong. I nodded, drying my tears. But in my mind, there was only one thought. Michael had to know the truth, even if it destroyed him. That night, I brought the recording home, my soul heavy. Leo was playing with his blocks in the living room, and Michael had just gotten home from work, taking off his jacket. I waited until Leo went to his room and then took Michael out to the patio. The night wind was blowing, carrying the coolness of autumn. "Michael, I need you to listen to this," I said in a trembling voice, handing him the small recorder Miller had given me. Michael looked at me, his eyes full of doubt. "Are we back to this, Mom? I told you I don't want to hear any more nonsense stories about Jessica." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Just listen to it, Michael. Just this once. If I'm wrong, I'll never bring it up again." He hesitated, but finally took the recorder. When Jessica's voice came on, I saw Michael's face change. Doubt turned to shock and then to a deathly pallor. "Maybe it's edited," he mumbled, but his voice was shaking as if he didn't even believe what he was saying. Just then my phone rang. It was Miller. I put it on speaker, and his voice came through serious. "Mrs. Thompson, I've sent you this recording from the official surveillance system. It is authentic evidence, without any alteration." Michael sank into a chair, holding his head in his hands, his eyes red. Leo ran out of his room, sensing the tension. "What's wrong, Daddy?" he asked in a worried voice, clinging to Michael's hand. He could only hug his son tightly, unable to say a word. I knelt down, stroked Leo's head, and forced a smile. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Your daddy's just a little tired." That night, Jessica came home late. She walked in with her perfect smile, but when she saw the look on Michael's face, her smile froze. Michael looked at her, but his eyes were different. There was no longer tenderness, but a pain mixed with rage. Still, he tried to act normal. "Everything okay at the meeting, honey?" he asked. Jessica nodded, her voice soft. "Yes, everything's fine, dear. Just a little tired." I stood there watching her act, my heart broken. She didn't know Michael had heard the recording, didn't know her curtain of lies was about to fall. The air in the house felt thick, heavy. Leo, sensing the tension, quietly went to his room to play alone with his teddy bear. I looked at him, a lump in my throat. He didn't deserve this, didn't deserve to be trapped between the truth and a lie. I wanted to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay, but I knew I couldn't promise him anything at that moment. A few days later, D.A. Evans showed up at the house unannounced. She was wearing a long coat and her expression was serious. "Mrs. Thompson, we have news," she said in a grave voice. "Surveillance data shows that Jessica and Ryan are planning to escape. They've already bought plane tickets to Miami. We have to act now." I sank onto the sofa, feeling the floor open up beneath me. Jessica wasn't just betraying Michael. She was going to abandon Leo, to leave everything behind to be with Ryan. I looked at the DA, my voice trembling. What do I do now? "Leo, he can't lose his mom like this." DA Evans put a hand on my shoulder, her gaze firm but compassionate. "We need your cooperation," she said. "Keep watching Jessica, inform us of any strange movements, and prepare for the worst." Her words were like a knife, sending a chill through me. What was the worst? That Leo would lose his mother? That Michael would end up with a broken heart? Or that my family would be dragged into even greater danger? That morning I woke up with a terrible sense of dread. I was washing dishes when the phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Detective Miller. His voice was urgent, direct. "Mrs. Thompson? We just found out that Jessica bought emergency plane tickets to Miami. The flight leaves from Chicago O'Hare tonight." I froze. The plate I was holding nearly slipping from my hands. Miami. That word echoed in my head like a sharp blade. Jessica was really going to escape. To leave Michael, to leave Leo, to leave everything behind for Ryan Peterson. "Are you listening to me?" Miller's voice brought me back to reality. "Yes, I hear you," I replied, my voice trembling. "What do I need to do?" He spoke quickly. "We're going to move in, but you need to tell Michael. He has to know the truth, and we need both of your cooperation." I nodded, though he couldn't see me, and hung up, my heart a stone in my chest. I immediately thought of Michael, my son, who was still living in blind faith in the woman he loved. I couldn't let him keep deceiving himself. I put on a coat, left Leo with Mrs. Gable, and took a taxi to the construction site where Michael worked. When I arrived, he was standing by a pile of bricks, sweating, with a tired look in his eyes. He was surprised to see me. "Mom, what are you doing here? Did something happen?" I pulled him to a corner where no one could hear us. Tears were welling in my eyes as I told him, "Michael, you have to come with me. Jessica, she's going to run away. She bought plane tickets to Miami with Ryan Peterson. You have to see the truth with your own eyes, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Michael looked at me, his eyes torn between disbelief and pain. He shook his head, his voice hoarse. "Mom, not this again. I don't." I took his hands, cutting him off. "Michael, I'm begging you. Just this once. If I'm wrong, I will never mention it again." He was silent for a long time, his eyes red, and finally he nodded. "Okay, Mom, I'll go." I hugged him, feeling my own heart break. I knew this truth was going to destroy my son, but I couldn't let him live in a lie. In the afternoon, the police picked us up. In the car, Miller explained the plan, his voice calm but decisive. "We have undercover agents who will pose as passengers. One team will be at the security checkpoint and another will wait at the boarding gate. Mrs. Thompson, Michael, you just need to be there and confirm the identities of Jessica and Peterson. Don't do anything to arouse suspicion." I nodded, clutching the sweat-soaked handkerchief in my hand. Michael sat beside me in silence, his gaze lost out the window, as if searching for a bit of peace before the storm. At Chicago O'Hare, the atmosphere was a chaotic mix of noise and people. Flight announcements blended with conversations, but to me, it was all a distant murmur. They took us to a discreet corner in the waiting area where we could see without being seen. I sat next to Michael, holding his hand tightly. He said nothing, but I could feel the tension in his every breath. "Mom, if all of this is true," he whispered, his voice broken. I squeezed his hand, not daring to answer, just whispering back, "I'm here, Michael. We'll get through this." At the scheduled time, I saw Jessica appear. She was wearing a long gray coat, dark sunglasses, and was pulling a large suitcase. Beside her was Ryan Peterson in an elegant suit, walking with an air of superiority. They were laughing and talking, like a couple about to start a romantic trip. Seeing them, I felt a pain that tore my soul apart. I glanced at Michael and saw him frozen, as stiff as a statue. His eyes were red, his hands clenched into fists. "You see," I whispered, my voice trembling, holding back tears. Just as Jessica handed her passport to the airport employee, the space was shattered by a firm shout. "Police! Nobody move! Ryan Peterson and Jessica Thompson, you're under arrest!" Everything happened in an instant. The undercover agents appeared from nowhere and surrounded them. Ryan tried to run, but two burly men immediately tackled him to the ground. Jessica screamed and struggled, her voice shrill. "You've got the wrong people!" "I'm innocent. I didn't do anything." Michael ran toward her, unable to hold back any longer. "Why, Jessica?" he yelled, his voice cracked with pain. "Why did you do it?" "Me, Leo, this family." "Did you throw it all away for him?" Jessica turned, her eyes terrified, but she quickly regained her composure and said coldly, "You don't get it, Michael. You never would." Her words were like a stab wound that left Michael motionless, his face pale. I ran to Leo, who was hiding behind me, his eyes wide with fear. I hugged him, covered his eyes with my hand and whispered, "Don't look, sweetheart. Grandma's here." Leo was shaking, and in a tiny voice he asked, "What's happening to Mommy, Grandma?" I didn't know what to say, just held him tighter, feeling his little heart race. I wanted to protect him from that scene, from the cruel truth that his mother had chosen a path where he didn't belong. As the police led Jessica and Ryan away, she turned abruptly. Her eyes locked on mine, cold and full of hatred, as if I were the one to blame for destroying everything. I stood there hugging Leo, watching her in handcuffs, feeling a mix of pain and relief. The truth had come out, but it had also shattered my family. Michael was motionless, his expression blank, his eyes following his wife as she was taken away. I wanted to run and hug him, to tell him everything would be okay. But I knew that those words at that moment meant nothing. After the arrest at the airport, they took us straight to the station to give our statements. The patrol car moved silently through the busy Chicago streets, but I had no mind for anything but Leo, who was snuggled up against me. He was trembling, his little hands clinging to my clothes, as if he were afraid that if he let go he would lose me forever. I held him tight, trying to give him some warmth to calm his fear, but I myself was in the midst of a storm of emotions. Michael sat beside me as absent as a shadow, his eyes red and his gaze lost out the window. He said nothing, but I knew his heart was in pieces. At the station, the air was thick, filled with the incessant ringing of phones and the hurried footsteps of officers. They took us to a small waiting room where the cold metal chairs made me feel even more alone. I held Leo in my arms, stroking his back and whispering, "Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart." But my words sounded hollow, as if I didn't believe them myself. From the interrogation room just a few feet away came Jessica's screams, sharp and desperate. "I'm innocent. I don't know anything. You're making a mistake." Day Evans's furious slam on the table would silence her voice, but every word from Jessica was like a knife in my heart. She kept denying everything, clinging to her perfect facade, even when everything had crumbled. We spent hours in that cold waiting room. Leo fell asleep in my lap, and his steady breathing was the only thing that kept me sane. Michael was still there, not saying a word. His hands clenched so tight they turned white. I wanted to say something to comfort him, but what words could ease the pain of someone who had just lost the world they believed in? Finally, an officer approached and allowed us to leave. "That's enough for today," he said in a dry voice. "We'll be in touch if we need more information." But as soon as we walked out the station doors, a crowd of reporters surrounded us. The flashes from the cameras were blinding, microphones were shoved in our faces, and questions rained down like a torrential storm. "What role did your family play in the Ryan Peterson case? How does it feel to have your daughter-in-law arrested?" I quickly covered Leo's face with my coat, terrified that his innocent eyes would be captured in the newspapers. Michael could barely walk, stumbling. I took his arm and helped him push through the crowd, praying for some peace. "We have no comment. Please let us through," I shouted, my voice broken with exhaustion and anger. When we got home, Mrs. Gable was waiting for us at the door, her gray hair disheveled and her eyes full of anguish. "Oh, Sarah, I saw the news," she said, her voice trembling. "How could all this have happened?" I just shook my head, unable to speak. I felt tears about to fall, but I held them back, not wanting Leo to see me weak. "Thank you, Rosa," I said, my voice hoarse. "You go get some rest, I'm okay." But when Mrs. Gable left, I felt the world collapse on top of me. The house, once filled with the laughter of Leo and Michael, now felt cold and empty. That night, no one touched dinner. I made the bean soup that Leo loves so much, but he just stared at his plate, his eyes sad. Michael sat alone in a corner of the living room, a half-empty bottle of tequila beside him. He mumbled, almost voiceless, "My whole life, I trusted the wrong person." I believed her, Mom. His words broke my heart. I wanted to run and hug him, to tell him everything would be okay, but I knew those words were useless now. Michael had lost the wife he loved, and Leo, the mother he admired. Leo snuggled up next to me and asked in a whisper, "Grandma, where did Mommy go? Why isn't she coming back?" His question was like a dagger straight to my heart. I held him tight as tears fell silently. "Mommy had to go far away for a while, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice soft. "But Grandma is here, and I'll always be with you." Leo nodded, but I know he didn't understand. How could a 7-year-old understand that his mother had chosen a path where there was no room for him? That night, as I was rocking Leo to sleep, the TV in the living room was broadcasting the news. The image of Jessica, handcuffed and with her head bowed, being led through the halls of the station, appeared on the screen. Leo, who wasn't quite asleep yet, saw it by accident. He burst into tears, and his cry of "Mommy!" echoed in the dark room. I immediately hugged him and changed the channel, but that image was already burned into his mind. "Why does Mommy have handcuffs, Grandma?" he asked, tears streaming down his cheeks. I held him tighter, not knowing what to say. "I don't know, sweetheart," I whispered as my own tears fell, "but I promise I will protect you." After the news, my phone rang. It was D.A. Evans. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for your cooperation in this operation," she said, her voice serious but understanding. "We've arrested Ryan Peterson and Jessica, but the case isn't over. I need you to prepare to be the main witness at the trial." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "I understand," I replied, my voice hoarse. "I'll do whatever I have to do." The weeks following the arrest at the airport were a whirlwind, as if our entire world had been turned upside down. Michael took an unpaid leave of absence from work to stay home and take care of Leo. He didn't want the boy to face the curious stares or malicious questions from people. I would look at my son, once a strong man, now gaunt. His eyes were always red, as if he had cried every possible tear during the long, sleepless nights. I wanted to hug him, to say something to ease his pain, but I knew no words could heal the wound Jessica had left. Leo, my little grandson, never stopped asking about his mom. "Grandma, when is Mommy coming back?" he would ask in his small voice, his round eyes full of hope. Every time he did, my heart would ache. I couldn't tell him the cruel truth that his mother had chosen a path where he didn't belong. Instead, I would make up vague stories, take him to the park, buy him ice cream, trying to fill the void in his little heart with brief moments of joy. But every time Leo smiled, I could see the sadness hidden in his eyes. At 7, he was too young to understand, but old enough to feel the loss. I had to go to the station several times to speak with D.A. Evans and Detective Miller. They would ask me to recount every detail, from what I saw on the iPad, the call I overheard, to the look of hatred from Jessica at the airport. Every time I told the story, it was like reliving those horrible moments, but I knew I couldn't stop. "You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Thompson," D.A. Evans would tell me, her gaze both stern and compassionate. "Thanks to you, we've dismantled a major criminal network." I would nod, but I felt no relief. Bringing down Ryan Peterson's network was a victory, but my family had paid the price with wounds that would never heal. On the street, the reporters wouldn't leave us alone. They would camp out in front of the house, their cameras ready to snap a picture of anyone who came out. One time, I went to the market for vegetables, and as I was leaving, a group of them surrounded me. "How does it feel to be betrayed by your own daughter-in-law?" one shouted, his microphone nearly in my face. "Did you know about her illegal activities?" I lowered my head and walked as fast as I could, clutching the bag of vegetables as if it were my only support. "Please, just leave us alone," I told them in a trembling voice, but they didn't stop. When I got home, I locked the door securely, drew the curtains, trying to create a safe space for Leo and Michael. But I knew we couldn't hide forever. One night, when Leo was fast asleep, Michael sat next to me on the patio bench. The cool air blew, carrying the scent of eucalyptus. He put his hand on my shoulder, his voice choked with emotion. "Mom, I was so blind." "I didn't believe you. I didn't want to see the truth. If it hadn't been for you, I would have lost everything." Tears streamed down his cheeks, and for the first time in weeks, I saw my son cry. I hugged him, patting his back, just like when he was a little boy. "You didn't lose everything, Michael," I whispered. "You still have Leo and you have me. We're going to get through this, son." He nodded, but I knew the pain in his heart wouldn't disappear so easily. The trial took place a few months later. I decided not to bring Leo, even though he kept asking, "Grandma, I want to see my mommy." I didn't want him to see her in the defendant's box. I didn't want that image to haunt him for the rest of his life. On the day of the sentencing, I sat in the front row across from Jessica and Ryan Peterson. Jessica was convicted of complicity and money laundering, while Ryan received the maximum sentence for leading the counterfeit drug and environmental contamination ring. The case brought down several high-level officials, shaking up the entire pharmaceutical industry. But when I looked at Jessica, her head bowed and her hair a mess, I felt no victory. I only saw a woman who had lost everything to greed and lies. When I returned home after the trial, I felt as if I were waking up from a long nightmare. Michael was at the door, greeting Leo, who was coming from Mrs. Gable's house. The boy ran to hug me, saying cheerfully, "Grandma, I made a drawing at school today. I want you to see it." I smiled, stroking his head, relieved to see his innocent smile. We sat on the patio, and I made a pot of chamomile tea whose aroma filled the air. Michael sat beside me, while Leo played in the yard, chasing a butterfly. The sun was setting, painting the yard in golden hues, and for the first time in many months, I felt a little bit of peace. I looked at Leo and thought about the painful journey we had been through. Who would have thought that because of a simple iPad a little boy took by mistake, a whole curtain of lies would come crashing down? That truth was painful. It tore our family apart. But I preferred facing it to living a lifetime in a fake happiness. I leaned over, kissed Leo on the forehead, and felt his warmth. "I love you, my boy," I whispered, a lump in my throat. Sitting there, in the light of the setting sun, I promised myself that I would do everything I could to rebuild what was left of this family. Leo needed me, Michael needed me, and I needed them to keep on living. Life had taught me one last lesson. The truth, no matter how cruel, is always worth facing, because only it can open the path to healing and starting over. I watched Leo run through the yard, his smile like a ray of sunshine dispelling the darkness. And I knew that even though the road ahead would be difficult, we would get through it together, one step at a time. The story you've just heard has had its names and places changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell it to judge, but in the hope that someone will hear it and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I truly wonder, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose silence to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to reclaim your own voice? I'd like to know your opinion, because every story can become a light that illuminates the path for others. God always blesses, and I'm sure that courage will lead us to better days. For now, on the end screen, I'll leave you with two of the channel's favorite stories. I'm sure you'll be surprised. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.